Hey guys, I am Sharon Tillman here. Happy Tuesday. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Journey to Identity. I hope everyone is having an amazing day on today. We are in the second week of October, and my church has Holy Convocation coming up this week. And y'all, I am so excited about it. Have you ever found yourself in like some extreme anticipation, right? That is one of those, that's one of those moments for me. Like it is extreme anticipation about the moment and the encounter and like the move of God that is to come forth. It starts on Wednesday. Look, I'm going to just go ahead and be like, the plug advertiser, right? So if you hear this and you haven't saw it on any of the social media platforms, I'ma need you to still pull up, right? But it is Holy Convocation at our church, Charlotte, North Carolina, the River. Bishop Sellers is the presiding bishop for our church. And it's going to be amazing. It starts tomorrow, October 8th. So it's Wednesday through Sunday. And it's going to be amazing. We have some dynamic speakers and psalmstress that's going to come through and that's going to bless the house in so many ways. And so if you are able to come, 7429 Tuckasegee Road, please come. Please show up. Please come and get what the Lord has in store for you. Like you can watch it online, but I promise you it's nothing like getting in the room, right? So Holy Convocation tomorrow it starts. I'm excited. I also had another night of Get Rooted on last night. Listen, I love the group Get Rooted. I love the ladies who sign up for this group, who come in and they are so ready, like just so overwhelmingly ready to get what's in store for them. And so I love that, right? I absolutely love the fact that there is no stopping, there is no holding back. It's almost like one of those things where it's like, I've been here too long and I don't choose to live or to dwell here anymore. Like there is something that the Lord has in store for me and I want it, right? And I want all of it. And I want to walk in the freedom of that. And so that is what Get Rooted allows. It allows you to walk in the freedom of the very thing that God has called you to do, the very thing of who he's called you to be, and building your self-esteem, building your self-worth, building your identity in the midst of all of that. So I'm so excited. We are about 3 weeks out before this one ends, and then I will be starting a new one come January. So I'll have a new group, Get Rooted in Identity, that will start in January. And then I will also have a Rooted in Purpose. I think I'm going to title it Rooted in Purpose. I'm not really sure. But this one is going to be more for divorced women, right? This is going to be more for women who've been through a divorce and who feel like they've lost themselves in any type of way when it comes to marriage, and they never thought that they would find themselves in a divorce. And so now they're here trying to figure out where they belong, what they're supposed to be doing, and what their identity truly is, right? And I can speak so heavily to that coming out of a divorce and going into this marriage, going into my relationship with my ex-husband, John, right? That is his name. But going into this situation with John all of these years ago, even in the relationship before getting married and having no idea of what my identity was, having no idea of who I was and who I was called to be. Like I literally thought like getting with John is going to change my life, because now I'm going to have a sense of purpose, a sense of life as if I didn't have it before. And because of the way that I grew up, because of my environment, because of my background, because of even my parents, I thought that that wasn't feasible for me. And it was because I was looking at the things that was right in front of me instead of looking up to the one who created me. I didn't realize that all of the things that I was never rooted in my environment here on earth. All of the things that I was to become was rooted in who the Father had already created me to be when he put me in my mother's womb. And so because I didn't have the connector of that then in my life, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand that this is the way in which God was calling me. I didn't understand that although I'm creating my path, the Lord's word says many other plans, right? But God's purpose will prevail. It doesn't matter what your plans are. So I had plans for my life, but God's plans prevailed. And so when I went through that divorce, it was hard for me. And so I get into a little bit of that today. We talked about that on the last episode. And so I would love you guys' feedback. I'm still asking for feedback. But we talked a little bit about that on the last episode, and so I'll dig a little bit more into that today. But I had no idea who I was, and so it wasn't until God took me back to that very place of where I was. Right, He took me back to the very place of where I thought my identity started was the last place that I invested in the identity of myself, the identity in which he called for me, because I was too busy formulating the identity of my life that I was creating within my own world. And so he took me back to that place. So I said all of that to say that for all of my divorced ladies out there, whether you are newly divorced, whether you've been divorced for years and you're still trying to figure out what that looks like for you. You're trying to figure out if this was your path. You're trying to figure out who you are going to show up and be now that you're no longer married, that your spouse is no longer with you, that whether he passed away or whether you guys got divorced because this is what it looks like. And now you're trying to figure out who you are and how you're supposed to go on and what life looks like for you on the other side. This group is for you. I want you to get in the room. Look out for all of the registration details. Everything comes out. Will be coming out in the latter part of the year. These groups will start running at the beginning of next year. And so I'm excited to get it out to you. I'm excited for the push. I'm excited just to be able to share and to invest and to put all of the things back into the earth realm that the Lord has done for me, because he is so kind and he is so gracious, and he doesn't take us through a triumph. He doesn't allow us to overcome and him to get the glory just for us to keep it to ourselves. We are to share. We are to invest into other people. We are to be the walking billboard for the glory of God. Listen, there is no respective person when it comes to the Father. He loves us all. This is what I love about him, right? Because the intentionality of there are billions of people in this world, and God has the ability to make every single one of us feel like his priority. I am a priority of my Father. You are a priority of our Father. And he doesn't treat me no better than he treats you, and vice versa, because he loves us all and he makes time and space for each one of us. And so because of that, he doesn't, listen, he's not walking around here or looking down like, oh, I'm going to let her shine, but I'm going to leave her down because she don't like, absolutely not. He loves us all, and he wants us to be free. He wants us to be free in who he's called us to be. He wants us to walk in the identity of Christ. He wants us to show up every single day, everywhere that we go. He wants us to show up exactly the way that he's created us. And so I'm so grateful that I just get an opportunity to give all that God has given to me. And I get to share it with each and every one of you, and for all of you that show up in my group, and for everyone that I encounter. People know who I am when I encounter them, because I'm the identity girl, and I'm always investing that into everybody that I encounter. So okay, that was that spiel, but look out for these groups. Please stay on the lookout. Listen, all of my social media platforms are I am Sharon Tillman. So I need you to go and follow me on Instagram, on Facebook. I am Sharon Tillman on Twitter. I am Sharon Tillman on TikTok. I am Sharon Tillman on YouTube. I don't have a lot of videos from this particular podcast on there, but I need to start putting some on there, maybe doing some lives or something so you guys can chime in and you can be able to like have like those open sessions with me. So I'm working on that. I promise you, I hear you guys. I'm working on that. Okay. So all of those things are in the work. All of those things are to come. Please keep a lookout for everything that is to come. Please keep a lookout because it's on its way. So if we pick up from the podcast from last week, I think the last thing that I ended with was I was talking about how I kind of just went off on the social media platform, right? And I think at that moment, right, I felt like, or at least I was able to acknowledge that I was really hurt, right? So if you listen to the podcast, I talked about like, walking away like, I'm going to be totally fine. Like he's going to feel it. John is going to feel all of the things because this was a John thing. Like we're not together because of John. It has nothing to do with me. I did my part. I invested in this marriage. I gave what I felt like I was called to give in this marriage. I done the things, right? So in my mind, it's like, girl, you done all of the things. You're going to be totally fine. And I would hear people say things like, going through a divorce is like mourning a death, but it's harder because in death, you never see the people again. But the mourning the death of a divorce is like you can walk down the street and see him, or like you can walk in Walmart and see him. I see John in my Walmart all the time. So I could say Walmart, right? But in my mind, I'm like, but Sharon, you're not going to go through that because you invested. Like you loved John. You did the things. Like you were there. You showed up. You took care of him. Like God is going to honor that and you're going to be okay. Right. And I think because I had that ideology within my mind that I never allowed myself to feel. So when I came out of my marriage and I went straight into separation with John, I went straight outside. And I think that everything that I was doing outside, although I had fun, okay, I had a lot of fun outside. If the people tell you they don't have fun outside, they either want outside or they lying. Don't believe them, okay? It's the trick of the enemy. Don't believe it. But I went outside and I think I did all of the things because I was like, hey, I'm not going to allow myself to feel. Because I don't deserve to feel, right? There's that pride again. I don't deserve to feel. I done what I was supposed to do. I'm not supposed to hurt. I'm not supposed to cry. I'm not supposed to be going through any pain or anything. Like, no, he can do that. Let him suffer. Let him feel it. Let him do all of the things. And so I think because I went in like that, it was easy for me to go out there and have so much fun and really just I want to say really just dial away or like pull away or like just not even connect with, right? Like disconnect from my feelings or what I feel like I might be trying to feel, but I'm not going to feel because I'm not going to allow myself to feel it. So it was like one of those moments for me. It was one of those moments for sure. And so I think when I sent out the message, or I know when I put that message out and after I had time to sit with it, I realized that all of the things that I was saying was untrue. I was really hurt. Like I was angry. I was mad. I had a flood of emotions, right? And so one thing that I've learned is to connect with the emotions, right? A lot of times we disconnect with the emotion because we feel like we're not supposed to feel that. If I feel anger, but I don't acknowledge that I feel anger, then anger will go away. Well, it doesn't, right? It doesn't. And when you find yourself back in a place that makes you feel angry, like it's almost like the compiled anger that was there that you keep trying to suppress because you won't allow yourself to even acknowledge that it exists. It just gets stronger. It gets bigger because you're not ridding it. You're suppressing it. And so what happens when you suppress? You suppress something for so long, it's like a bottle that you're shaking, right? We all think about shaking a soda bottle, right? And when we shake that soda bottle, the pressure of that lid makes it pop off and then you have an explosion, right? And so when we think about that emotion that we're disconnecting to, depending on what the emotion is, that can be the same thing. We can continue to suppress it until one day something makes us angry, and then it's anger from the last 7 things that we've been going through. And people may be looking at you like, oh my gosh, like, why did they get so angry? It wasn't that deep. It wasn't even that serious. Have you ever had moments like that? And like, you can't even explain it sometimes. You get so upset about something, or you get so emotional about something, and in your mind you're like, why am I so angry? Why am I so emotional? It was simple, or it was just this. It's only because you're suppressing those emotions in other areas and in other facets of your life. So where when it happens to you again, it's just increasing. It's getting bigger, right? And so I allowed myself to connect with those emotions and feel. And then I had a great conversation with my father because I was so angry. I was so angry and I was so upset and I felt so betrayed, right? Because in my life, in my mind, I'm like, I've been through so many things. I did it right because I wanted a different outcome, right? I had this thing mapped out in my mind. Like, God, and then I'm in school, right? I'm in school to be a therapist. I'm in school to be a marriage therapist at that. So I'm like, how am I supposed to even do this? How am I supposed to help people save their marriages? And I couldn't even save my own. Like, God, like, now I feel like my whole life is derailed because, like, even not just my identity formulated within my marriage, but my career path was formulated in my marriage, or so I thought. And like, even in the direction in which I was carrying myself and the things that I was doing, it was like all of that was it was tied to the identity of being a wife. I was stewarding a podcast, and the podcast was for wives. So it's like, I was so confused. I was like, God, I'm so confused. I'm upset. Like, and I was able to let that anger out. And what I love about the Father is he doesn't even not allow us to tell him the truth. He doesn't not allow us to say what we need to say, to feel what we feel. He is there. He loves us. He comforts us even in the midst of that. And I can remember even feeling like God wrapping his arms around me as I cried in his shoulders because I was so upset. I was so angry. And I think more than anything else, I was heartbroken, right? I was heartbroken. First of all, it's completely out of my character to come out the way that I did. And I knew that. That's not who I am. And I knew that. So even though I enjoyed putting it out there, okay, and I left it out there for a little while because I wanted to make sure that everybody who screenshotted it had got their screenshots in, okay? Because I was still petty. Like, let me be clear. I don't want to lie to you, right? But I knew deep down inside that that was just not who I was. That's not who I was. And I'm like, I if I'm not mistaken, my friend came to me and she was like, Sharon, you're displaying hurt or anger. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm not hurting. I'm just putting the facts out there because you don't disrespect me and you don't disrespect my children. Like, and it was almost like I was trying to justify the behavior when deep down inside, I knew that that was out of character for me. I knew that that was not who I was. And even though it got so much press, it went in all of the different places, like, I had family members of John to reach out to me to tell me that I better watch out, that the Lord is coming to get me, that I'm getting ready to suffer because I've blasphemed and I've, spoken bad about the pastor and like all of the things, right? Just a lot of different threats and all of the things. But in all honesty, none of those things worried me as much as, Sharon, this is out of character for you. And so that's when I had to go to the Father. And I remember just laying there and I cried. And y'all, I mean, it was one of those moments for me where I feel like I cried for hours. Like I just cried and I cried, and I could feel the comfort. I could feel the love. I could feel the support of my father, even in the midst of that. Like I could feel, right? I could feel him like holding me and letting me know that it was going to be okay. And if unless you've connected with God in that way, you may not understand this, but I could feel it. Like I knew that he was there, and I knew that he was listening, and I knew that he was acknowledging. And I was like, God, you know what? I gotta come back. And I could feel the pull to come back already. I could feel like, as much fun as I'm having outside, right? I could feel myself not wanting to do certain things at certain times, right? I could feel like, oh, I'm going outside and I'm going to do this. Or I could feel like when I first went out there, and I'm going out, I'm dating, I'm doing all of the things. I'm drinking, I'm doing all of the things. I had a blast, right? But I could feel that the energy that I had for it in the beginning, I didn't have the same energy anymore. And there were moments when I would like kind of push myself to go out because I really wasn't feeling it. And I would go out and I would have a good time. But the reality was like, you're having to push yourself out there a little more every single time than you did before. So I could feel the pull. I could feel God leading me back. I could feel him pulling me back. I really could. And so at that moment, with all those tears and with all of that emotion, I said, yes, I'm coming back. Like, God, I got to come back to you. And so I remember making the decision that I was going back, that I'm going to get my life back on track, that God, I repent. I'm sorry. Like, God, thank you for keeping me while I was out there, right? Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for not allowing any of this to harm me in any way, because like I'm drinking, like any of the things could have happened. I could have found myself in a situation that I wasn't supposed to be in. Like I'm meeting people, like anything could have happened. I had my first one night stand. Like I'm totally transparent, y'all. I had my first one night stand when I was outside in my big grown age, right? All these things happening out here, like protected, but still, I don't really know you for real, right? And so like even in that, God was a keeper and he was a protector. And so I knew that in my going back that I was, and we're a year in at this point, right? This is not like a overnight transformation. No, like by the time that message came out, it was a year later, right? Because I officially got my divorce papers that very same month. So by the time it came out, it's a whole year later. So there's time that has passed. This is not like an overnight transformation. And I want to give you an accurate timeline because I think sometimes even in the faith, they make us feel like things happen so instantaneously. They make us feel like, oh, God said this and it happened just like that. And for some people, it may, right? I don't want to discredit anything or anybody. For some people, that actually may be their journey. It may be their story, but it doesn't happen like that for everybody. So whatever your journey is, and for whatever the amount of time that God allows you to go through something, I don't want you to feel like, okay, it's taking too long. Maybe I'm not supposed to be here, or it's taken too long and you've decided to give up in the midst of your transformation. I want you to stay the course, right? I want you to hold on. So by the time this comes, I'm finding myself going back, right? And so the enemy, because the enemy is the enemy, still kill, destroy, and distract. If anybody knows how I can get distract in the King James, reach out to me because I really want to add that word there. Okay. But the enemy was like, yeah, nah, Sharon, you just nah, because I know what the Lord has for you. So like, I need to keep you outside, girl. I need to keep you here. Right. So I'm getting myself back. And then boom, we have something that transpires within my church, within my ministry concerning me. And y'all, it was devastating. Like It was one of the most embarrassing, devastating things that I probably have ever encountered in a ministry before in my life, right? And so, one thing I want to say about my ministry is it's a big ministry. And I didn't come to the ministry because I had family there, I had friends there, I knew people there. I came to the ministry because this is where the Lord led me, right? So myself and my three children came to this ministry because this is where I was led. When I came there, my cousin is the one that, even showed me, or we visited the ministry together, which John's cousin, but she's my cousin. I love her. We visited the ministry together. She introduced me to the pastor, like to Bishop and the First Lady. And those three people were the only people that I knew when I showed up. And so she wasn't coming every Sunday. So it wasn't like we were coming together every Sunday. When the Lord said, this is where I'm supposed to be, I had to make an executive decision for myself and my family that I'm going to follow Christ in spite of, right, knowing people or any of the things. So for me, it was devastating because although I didn't come there with anybody, you gain rapport, being a part of anything. And so I didn't feel like I had like anything that was keeping me there outside of God, right? It was one of those things where I was like, okay, I'm leaving. Like, I'm taking my children. We're going to find another ministry. Like, I'm not doing this. I cannot do this. Like, God, there is no way I can't do this, right? And so when it happened, it was one of those things where not only did I want to run away from the ministry, but it was like, okay, yeah, I'm not ready, right? I'm not ready. Like, okay, I'm gonna go back outside for a little bit. Like, I thought I was going in, but then the enemy, he done got me. So here I go, right? And I did exactly what he wanted me to do. But one thing that I can say was different about this go round is like, it was almost like a countdown for me. It was like the more I tried to run, the more the Lord would work on me. The more I tried to run, the more he would convict me. The more I tried to run, the more he would speak to me. And I would find myself in encounters with him a lot more than I ever did before, even before going outside. And so I would find myself trying to run and feeling like I'm an analogy girl. So for people who are like visual people like me, people who are like need a visual, it's almost like somebody trying to run and you're holding their shirt in the back, right? So their legs are going, their arms are going, body ain't going nowhere, right? Because they're literally like running in place. They think they're going, but they really not going, right? That is exactly what that was for me. It was one of those things where it was like, I am running and the Lord is like, girl, you ain't going nowhere. Like, you are running in place. You don't even realize it, but you're running in place. And so that's what it was. I felt like I was just running in place. I wasn't going anywhere. And the Lord was like, no, because I have a work for you. And so when and the people that I was with outside, the people that I encountered, they knew where I was. So I would be like, yeah, this is my last trip. Or, yeah, this is my last time, even in fornication, right? Because I can be completely transparent. I had sex outside of marriage. Like, when I went into a separation, I had sex, right? So I sinned with sex. And I sinned with sex leading up until the Lord said no more. And so even with that, and I met I met two guys who were really, really serious. One guy was super spiritual. The other guy, he loved God, right? But, and they wasn't the only guys that I met, but they were the guys that I found myself as I was coming back inside in a more relationship kind of way, because I dated a guy while I was outside and we dated for a while, right? And I tell people all the time, he was such a good guy that if he loved God, then I might still be talking to him to this day because he was a good guy, right? But I also knew who I was in Christ. And so I think that's the one thing that we have to always remember, no matter where we derail, no matter what path we take, and we fall off track in whatever the case may be, because none of us are perfect, right? We've all got a journey. This is why a journey to identity is not just to give you my journey, it's to expose the journey that's on the inside of you, because we all have our own journey. And so even in like going out there and being outside, I still knew who I was in God. And I knew that God had a plan for my life. I couldn't see all of the plan. I didn't know what it would look like. I didn't even know in what direction I was going after that. I promise you. But I still knew that I was somebody in God, and I wasn't compromising that. Right? So I'm not falling in love with anybody who doesn't understand who I am in God, and they don't know who they are in God, because that ain't gonna work for me. And so with this particular guy, we dated and we dated and we dated, but the more I went inside, the more we fell off, right? But the two guys that I met, one of them, yeah, it wasn't gonna work out. But there was another guy. And he was seriously talking about marriage. And I love marriage. So I knew that marriage was something else that I wanted to do within my life. But even in my date with him, as we're talking, I'm telling him, like, I'm not going to have sex before marriage. Like, this is it for me. Like, I'm cutting it off, right? And I'm letting you know this because I need you to know and understand that this is the direction that I'm going. So if that doesn't work with you, this is our out right now, and because that's how serious I was about, okay, I have to get my life together. Like, I think the biggest thing for me, if I can be completely honest with you, was like, I can't allow this thing to kill me. I can't die here. I cannot die here. And I'm not talking about a physical death. I'm talking about a spiritual death. I can't allow the divorce to kill me spiritually. I can't blame God for this. And I never blamed him, right? I never blamed him. God gave me permission to choose me. I say it over and over again. So there was never a blame for God for what I was going through. I think for me, and I even remember my bishop asking me this question, and he was like, I've seen a lot of wives that were good wives that when they go through a divorce, they turn away from God, like as if being a wife was the only thing that connected them to God. And I said, for me, I think it's different. It wasn't the connector for me. It was the start of the connector, but I love God on my own at this point. I think it was more so of just doing good for so long and feeling like, right? Because it's the trick of the enemy, but doing good for so long and then feeling like all that good is gone. Like you did all that good and this is your end result. And that can be a little heartbreaking or devastating, right? And so I think for me, I was just like, I want to know what it feels like to like go out and have fun, because I got married young. I had my son young, right? I had my son at 19 years old, and I became a wife shortly after that. 21 years old, I was married. So I didn't experience like going out and, hanging out with my friends. I didn't experience all of those things because John wasn't that kind of guy. He wasn't a party guy. He wasn't a drinking guy. He wasn't a, turn up kind of guy. He had the foundation of Christ in his life, even if he didn't live by not necessarily the principles, right? Because we're not principle keepers. We're not rule keepers. We're kingdom people. So I don't think that he understood. He didn't have that connection. I think for him, it was more so of like, I'm going to do what people think that I'm supposed to do. And then I live this life on the back end because I'm not free to do what I would like to do. And I think that's the bondage of people. Serving God maybe out of obligation because This is the story of your life. This is what your family has done. This is what your family is known for. And it's like, I have to do this because it represents the brand. But deep down inside, my heart is on something different. And I don't know how to merge those worlds. So I'm going to present this, but I'm going to do this, right? And I'm not judging him, because I feel like a lot of us have done that, to everybody to a different extent, right? But everybody's done it, right? And so we have to connect to those roots that are deep down inside so that we can understand the why behind the things that we do. So that was it for me. But I knew that, I love God. So I've gotta figure out what's next for me. I gotta figure it out. And like, God, I'm walking into an era that is so uncomfortable for me, because John was a lot of things for me. He fulfilled a lot of longings for me. He brought family. He brought consistency. He comes from a big family. And all of those things I long for because I didn't have, right? And so I felt like I was going back to the very place where I started. I was going back to a place of like, okay, God, I know that I'm somebody in you, but who am I? Who am I if I'm not a wife? That is the only identity that I know. How am I supposed to move forward without that? And it wasn't until I was able to pose that question to the Lord that he really began to do a work in me. The Lord changed my life. He changed the way that I saw myself, and the view and the lens that I even looked through when I thought about my identity and who I was in him, and how I attached it to all of the things that had absolutely nothing to do with who he called me to be to the core. And so I was establishing and I was building, right? And the Lord, I'm telling you, the Lord was always working on me, right? He that has began a good work shall complete it. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Okay. So I was already, working on like the confidence and the self-esteem. Like, these were things that the Lord had started to build in me already, right? So it wasn't a, shame, guilt kind of like, oh my God kind of thing. It was more like, I don't know who I am without John being my husband. And I'm pausing there because I want you to really hear that. I want you to hear how that sounds. And then I want you to think about an area in your life, or think about a relationship that you may have in your life, and how you're so attached to that relationship that sometimes, even if the relationship is unhealthy, you can't see that, because all you're focused on is what that attachment looks like and who you feel like you are with that attachment, and what happens if that attachment is no longer there. Like, as much as I thought that John and I would get a divorce one day, as much as I felt like a part of me is settling into accepting things and accepting the lowest version of, what marriage really looks like at some point. And honestly, I did feel like, our time was going to come to an end, because we were already starting to live separate lives, and we were already doing things, separately. And I feel like even when it came to him being away for 7 weeks, when he was like in the hospital and long care facility and then in rehab, like, that was God allowing me to see then, like, Sharon, you can do this, right? Because I had never paid a mortgage, and, I didn't have no plans on paying no mortgage, okay? Like, that, just all of the things. But it was like, even in that, God is like, Sharon, you can do this. You've got this. And things were just happening. And I'm like, okay, not even knowing that maybe it was preparation for what was getting ready to come, because I had no idea that this was going to be the outcome. It was a 6-month time frame from the time John got sick and went to the hospital until our separation. So my children went through 2 very traumatic things in a 6-month time frame. of watching their dad have a heart attack right in front of them to watching their mom and dad separate and live separately and go through a divorce, that this is all they've ever known. They've only known their parents to be together. They've never seen neither one of us with anybody else. They've never known us not to be together. This is the foundation of their life. They were born into this, and this is all that they know. So that was very traumatic for them, especially at their ages, right? And so I knew that. I understood that it was a lot. So in knowing that we would get a divorce and knowing that, one day this may happen, I don't think that I ever really mentally prepared for what that really looks like, right? Like, have you ever thought about something and you think about it enough to where it's like you done mapped it out in your head, kind of, sort of, right? Kind of, sort of mapped it out, kind of, sort of got a plan. You kind of, sort of thinking about this and that and the third. But then when it comes to you actually doing it or actually living in it, it's like, I didn't really mentally prepare for this. Like, giving up meat and becoming a vegetarian, right? It sounds good. But when you really think about in everything that meat is in and all of the ways that you desire meat in your meals, it's like one of those things where you're like, okay, the first 3 days is good. Or like, I can do this. But then you see them chicken wings and you like, I didn't mentally prepare for this. Like, I ain't ready. And so that's how I felt. I felt that even though I knew that it was going to happen, even though I knew it was a possibility that this was going to be our story one day, mentally I wasn't ready. After all of the things that we had just been through, all of the things that I was dealing with his family, all of the things that I had just dealt with him, my job, like everything is going haywire at this point because there are so many moving parts happening at one time. And because of that, I was just like, I know this, but I'm not prepared. So I wasn't prepared for what life looked like without John. I wasn't prepared for, what it meant to be a single parent and to have to do everything on my own, even though I did a lot of things on my own before. I just didn't equate it to be a single parent because I was still married. And so when I think about that, I needed I needed help. Like, God, if you want me to stay at this church, you got to show me how to do it. You got to show me how to live here because I have never lived here before. You got to show me, how do I live here? How do I show up after this? How do I still walk in here and be who you've called me to be in spite of all of the things that has transpired? How do I still get to the place that you're calling me to be in spite of what everybody else is saying or thinking or whatever the case may be? Like, God, I need your help, right? And so not only did I do that about my ministry, I did that even about my journey. Like, God, I don't know what you want from me. I don't know who I am. If I'm not a wife, who am I? If I am not a wife, what am I adding to this? Like, how am I supposed to show up? I don't want to be a single parent. I never wanted to be a single parent. Hence, me saying I'm going to get married and I'm going to have all my children by the same father. And we're going to live in a white house with a picket fence and we're going to have a little dog because I wanted them to have a different story than I. I knew what being a single parent looked like, and I didn't want that for myself or for my children. So, God, I made choices so that I didn't have to have this, and it still ends up being my portion. What am I supposed to do with this? What am I supposed to do with it? And so I encourage you, listen, I encourage you to be so honest with your feelings and your emotions and your heart. God cannot do anything with a heart that is covered by lies or by pretense or even by barriers. You've got to loosen the barriers and you've got to let God get to the actual heart. And that means you got to be open and you got to be honest. You got to be transparent and you got to be vulnerable. And if you can't do that with anybody on this earth because you're afraid that your vulnerability is going to be taken advantage of, then you have permission to do it with your Father. Please do it with him because it would change your life. And so I did it. And so I remembered the journey that God began to take me on. And it was such a life-changing journey for me. It was so life-changing for me. I remember I started a new job because things were getting tense because I had to be out of work so much. And so I was like, I just need a fresh start. And I think they did too, right? And so I took about 2 months off and then I started a new job. And when I started this new job, I was a nanny because that's what I do, right? I nannied for years. So I've been a nanny for years. So I've been working with kids and like nannying for people for some time. All while I was like going through school, getting my degree and everything. I got my bachelor's in psychology. My master's is in MFT family therapy, which is marriage family therapy. I did all of that while nannying because the girl still needed to pay these bills, right? So I remember starting this job and it's a little baby. So we're not really going out in the public as much because it's germs. There's so little. It's not much to do. And so I walked, right? This was also the start of my weight loss journey. I walked and I walked and I walked. And sometimes I would walk that baby about 2-3 times a day just to get out of the house, just to do something different. And I used my walking time as my time with God every single time. So I didn't listen to music. I didn't talk on my phone. I had my time with God. And I promise you, it was literally like God would take out of his very, very busy schedule to walk with me every single day. Every time I walked, he would come and he would take a walk with me and we would talk. And it wasn't a like transactional kind of thing where like I say something and then God says something and like I'm praying for something or praying about something and he responds to that. It was like mere conversation. Like God is walking with me. You know how you just take a scroll with the person that you love or maybe not your kids, because when you're walking with kids, they talk. When I'm walking with my daughter, she got 75,000 questions. It ain't the same thing. But if you're taking a walk with your spouse or if you're taking a walk with your best friend and you guys are just in a moment. So it's just genuine conversation. There's no like question answer kind of thing to where it's like something that has to be like forced, right? It wasn't forced. God walked with me every single day. And as we walked, I would just talk about where I was and how I felt and like how much I wanted to please him. Because at this point, I'm literally learning how to die. I didn't know what that really meant. I heard it, I talked about it a lot, but there was still pride and things in me that kept me from dying when I was married. And I think the humility of my divorce helped me to die the way that I needed to die. And I know it sounds crazy, right? And trust me, the Lord will humble you, okay? Don't always come the way we want it to come, but he'll do it. But he'll also take all things and work them together for your good. Romans 8:28, one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible, because that is what the Lord does. That is what he does. So as I would walk and we would just genuinely talk together, God would like point out his arm. Because I remember one day we're walking and I said, God, why am I like this? Why is it hard for me to trust people? Why is it hard for me to like really let people in? Like when did that start for me? And I remember God like pointing out his arm. And listen, you've got to be there. Like, this is why I'm saying he doesn't have a respective person. He loves us all. And so if you invite him into your heart, invite him into your intimate parts that you keep hidden from everybody else, he will be able to go with you in this way. Whether yours may not be walking, yours may be working out or driving in the car or whatever it is. It may be something different. But he would point his hand out and he would take me all the way back to the moments in which it started. When I stopped trusting people, he took me back to that childhood moment. When I felt abandoned and rejected, and I started to feel like I wasn't enough and I wasn't worthy, he took me back to that moment. And so every single day, God would take me back in that time and then walk me to my present every day. And I would be walking down the street. Y'all, I would be in full-blown tears in worship, just crying and praying. And I know the people was going up and down the road like, Lord, she is crazy. Okay? Somebody called the mama of that baby because that baby not safe, right? I want you to know, I'm certain, nobody never stopped, but I'm certain them people was like, is she okay? Do we need to call somebody? Because that's the way that it was. It was such a journey. But when I tell you, he took the time out of his busy schedule to see about little Omi. He took the time out to walk me back in time, to walk me through those moments, and to allow me to see what needed to happen in those moments so that I could move forward. God took me back to the place of where I didn't know who I was to show me who I was, to show me who I had always been. I just wasn't looking through the lens that I could see. And I used to say all the time, like, God, show me through your eyes, because the me that I see is not who you see. I can't connect to her the way that you can because I can't see her. And it was moments like that when God literally took me back. And so when it came to my identity, I went into my marriage to John not knowing who I was. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I belonged to. I didn't have a foundation of anything. Love was transactional for me. I didn't feel wanted. I was rejected by my dad's family. My dad didn't want me. My dad's family didn't want me. My dad wanted me, but my dad was in prison, so that didn't count. My dad's family didn't want me. My mom didn't want me. My mom doesn't have a solid foundation of family. So I lived with a cousin. I lived with my aunt. I lived with my mom's brother and his wife. Like, I was moved around, but I never truly felt like I belonged anywhere. Because even living in other people's house, like, you're not the actual kid. So when I lived with my aunt, I never felt like I was her actual kid. I lived with my cousin. I didn't feel that. And even with my mom's brother and wife, there were times when I would feel that, but then there were times when I didn't. And so it wasn't enough consistent for me to gravitate onto that. And so when I got with John, again, I had so many empty, voided places within me that John was filling voids, or I thought Getting with John would fill those voids that were empty, those voids that were missing on the inside of me. But the reality is, only God could fill those empty vessels that's on the inside. You can date whoever you want. You can marry. You can get the career. You can get the house. You can get the job. You can get the car. You can get the guy. You can get the girl. Whatever it may be, you can get that title in your career. You can get that title in ministry. You can get any of the things. But it'll never fill the void that God is supposed to dwell in. And that is what I learned on my journey to identity. All my life, I was trying to fill those voids, fill those vessels with things. And I never invited God in to fill those vessels for me. And I'm telling you, when you invite him in to do it, he not only fills the vessels, he fills those voided places, but like you don't have an opportunity to long for things in the world that make you feel like you're at a deficit, right? You don't, because God truly feels. He truly feels. He truly delivers. He truly does. And so that walking, not only did he take me back, not only did he heal me, not only did he reveal my identity, he took 65 pounds off my life doing it. I was carrying weight of so many things. I was carrying the weight of the world. I was carrying the weight of my family. I was carrying the weight of the guilt and shame, the embarrassment, because I was truly embarrassed, y'all. Like, I was so embarrassed. Like, not just from the ministry thing, but from the marriage. Like, I was embarrassed. I'm out here trying to help people save their marriages, and I'm clearly, like, I can't even save mine. Like, I was embarrassed. And I even, said that to God. Like, God, what am I supposed to do with my life now? I can't be a marriage therapist. Like, how am I supposed to do that? And I even remember going within, like, my ministry, trying to be a part of, like, our wellness ministry to do that. And one of the therapists saying, well, people don't really like single marriage therapists. So nobody's gonna, nobody's probably gonna listen to you. They're probably just gonna, get the bishop in the first. So there's probably no place for you, right? And y'all, that thing devastated me to the point where I was about to quit school. Listen, this is how the enemy would trap you, and this is how the enemy set you up. I don't believe that the therapist meant no harm, right? Maybe that is how a lot of people think. If you're single, you can't tell me anything. In spite of my journey, they may feel like, well, it didn't work for you, so I don't want that advice. That may be absolutely the story. But what God has for you and who God has called you to be, he will open up the doors and he will make the room for you in the places that you're supposed to be in. I know that today. Now, when he said it, I didn't know that. So I fell away. Okay, let me be clear, because the Lord was he's still working on me today, but he was still really working on me then. I wasn't ready. But today I understand that what God has for me, no man can take that away. And so if God doesn't open up a door here, that means that he has another door. And so I don't stand at a door that doesn't want to let me in. I go to a different door. So it wasn't until that moment where I was like, God, I can't help people. What am I supposed to do? I feel so passionate about it. I love marriage. Listen, I was investing in marriage so much. And like everything that we do has a purpose. When we say no season wasted, when I say no season wasted, I mean there is no season wasted. There is never anything that you're doing in a season that God cannot use, ever. Because I was investing in marriage in a way that I didn't even know would pay off for me later on in my life. Reading books, the foundation of marriage. How do you connect? What men like, what women like, the 5 love languages, the 5 apology languages. Like I was doing so much investment, like Gottman and all of these different people. I'm reading up on this stuff. I'm trying to figure out ways. All the while, I'm thinking I'm trying to help my own marriage when God was using that as what he was going to do in my life a little later. And I didn't know that at that time. So I'm like, I'm investing and I'm doing all of this. And now I'm divorced. Like, God, what am I supposed to do? How am I going to help people save their marriage if I couldn't even save my own? And the Lord distinguishedly said to me, just as bold as I'm saying it to you, it wasn't your marriage to save. Y'all listen. It hit me like a ton of bricks, okay? I want to be very, very, very clear. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was just like, you right. Let me mind my business, because you're exactly right. It was never my marriage to save. And so out of the almost 20 years invested in that relationship with John, and almost the 14 years married to John, there were so many more gains than losses. If it wasn't for that divorce, I wouldn't be where I am today, to be confident, and even the season that I'm in, for me to know that that divorce saved my life, because I wouldn't have been able to fully tap into who God was calling Sharon to be, because Sharon's identity was so tied up in the marriage and the sum total. I remember even getting a prophecy a couple of years before, maybe a couple of years before my separation, maybe 2 years or so. And I remember a prophet coming to John's church, and he prophesied to me. And he was like, Sharon, he didn't call my name. I'm saying Sharon. But he said, woman of God, there is another level that God is going to take you to. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, Lord, that sounds like preaching. And that is not my call. Okay. Because clearly I'm as deep as I'm going to get. I don't think so. But he was like, there's another level that God is going to call you to. Like, you're going to make history. God is going to use you to make history. And as I'm listening to this prophecy, all I can think about is me and John. Like, John is doing this, John is doing that. It's about to hit. It's about to blow. We're going to do this together. I'm going to be able to incorporate my things with his things. Like, I couldn't even see myself making history without him. That was a very clear indication of where my identity was in who God had called me to be at that moment. But I couldn't even see that I was still having an identity crisis even in the midst of that. I couldn't see that I still wasn't fully confident in who God was calling me to be and what he was calling me to do in my life. I didn't even notice it then as much as I noticed it later. And I was like, wow, God is going to use me? Me? I never saw that without him. And if I would have never went through this divorce, I don't know if I would have ever fully walked into the identity of who God had called me to be. Now listen, okay? Let me say this before I wrap up. I need to make this very clear. I am not saying that God is getting ready to take y'all through divorces if you married so you can get to your identity. That is not what I'm saying. Your journey is your journey. He has the ability to use whatever he wants and decides to use, and it don't ever have to be the same for any two persons, right? We are all uniquely and wonderfully crafted according to the purpose that he placed inside of our mother's womb just for us. So the path and the journey that he has for me may look different than what he has for you. But I want you to know that you still got to pick that bed up. You got to pick that cross up and you got to walk, right? I tell my journey to expose the journey to you. Not for you to take my journey and say, oh, if I'm going to have to go through a divorce, I don't want it. Or for you to say, well, I don't want to have to do that, or I don't want to have to do this. No, it's not even a comparison. The journeys aren't comparison. I'm sharing my journey because I want you to take a harder look at yours, your journey, your identity, who you are and what that is wrapped up in, what it is tied up in. And if it is not fully tied up in God and who he's called you to be and what he's doing on the inside of you, it is out of pocket. I didn't know that my identity was out of pocket all of those years. All of those years. Because clearly when I came into that marriage, I didn't know who I was. So for me, having the identity or the title of being a wife was enough. I'm a wife, I'm a mom. And then when the Lord started to do other things and elevate, I became an author. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, Lord, you doing your big one. You showing out. Because I never saw that, right? I never saw that. When I entered that situation, I didn't see any of those things. So to get that far in my mind, I'm thinking like, yeah, this is good. Not even understanding that there was another level, that God was like, no, there's another level. Like, I'm using this as the foundation because you don't feel like you have one. You can't see you can't see the foundation that you already have. So I'm creating something for you to stand on because I need to be able to do the work in you. But I got to have somewhere to start. And I believe the identity of wife for me was where God started with me. He started with me and he took me on a roller coaster journey, okay, to get to where I am today. But I take absolutely no credit for my journey. I take no credit for where I am today or where I'm going. And I take nothing for the journey that I had to encounter to get here. I am so thankful and I am so eternally grateful to God that he saw me when I didn't see myself. And that he never stopped investing in me all this time. All those years, he never stopped what he had already invested. He never went back on his word to not make good on the investment that he placed on the inside of me when I was in my mother's womb. And so God has done such a journey in my life, from healing, from deliverance, killing pride, breaking me down for humility, all of the things that I desperately needed in order to fully die and to do the will of God. See, a lot of times we talk about dying, but we're really not trying to die, right? Or we talk about dying, but we're only talking about dying to the extent of where dying feels good to us. Okay, God, you said I gotta die. I'm dying. Whew, this is a little tight, but I'm gonna die here. But we don't get to choose to what extent we die. There are things that the Lord have to kill inside of us in order for his glory to really be prevalent in who he's calling us to be. And I didn't realize those things in those moments until I walked the journey that I went to. But I take nothing for it because it has absolutely changed my life. And I'm grateful, not just for who I am and who I am becoming, but I am grateful for even the revealing of God showing me who he called me to be, allowing me to see through a different lens so that I can see this Sharon Tillman that the Lord had already saw. He already saw it. He just needed me to see it. And this journey allowed me to do that. So I just want to encourage you. I want to encourage you on this journey. I want you to be encouraged no matter what it looks like. Listen, no matter what it looks like, no matter what you've been through, no matter what your environment is or was, no matter who your parents are, your identity in Christ is who he's invested in you to become. Look at the things that you're going through and reflect it back to who God is calling you to be. Who am I? When God first gave me that back in 2017, who are you? Who are you? When God gave me that, I was just like, what do you mean? And people would be like, I am what my name is, right? And even I had to go deeper because I was only seeing the surface of who God had called me to be at that time. But I didn't even understand that even that investment all of those years ago was for what he was doing in me today. And the journey doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. God wants us to depend heavily on him, which that's another journey in another day. I don't know if he gives me permission to share that, I'll share that. If not, I'll keep that one. But God wants us to be dependent on him because our next steps rely heavily on his will for our lives. And so in order for us to be exactly who God has called us to be and to walk fully in that, heavily in that, we got to be willing to die to ourselves, our wants, and what we desire for our lives, and be completely dependent and trust what he wants for us. Listen, thank you guys so much for listening. This is my journey, guys. This is the journey. And so we'll just pick up whatever the Lord leads me to say, however he leads me to talk about, identity and who you are and all of the things. I will give it to you every single week. But the Lord told me to share this, and I am sharing it. I am sharing it. It is 10 episodes of all of the things that led me to the journey that I am currently on, and I'm still journeying, right? I will never arrive because every single day is a new opportunity for me to fully walk in who God is calling me to be. And you guys, I can promise you that I won't stop. Even with the distractions that I currently face, I have to keep pushing. I have to keep moving forward. And I have to keep trusting God because I know that the outcome is so much bigger than me. There are people who are attached to me. There are peoples whose lives and identities lay in the balance of what God has done inside of me, who he's called me to be, and what I am to present to the world. And I will not stop until God fully gets all of the glory out of everything that he has called me to do. I won't stop. I want to die empty, and that's a physical death. When I physically leave this earth, I want to be empty, and I encourage you in the same. Listen, I love you guys. I love you guys, and I absolutely love to do what it is that the Lord has called me to do. You are amazing, right? And I want to encourage you in that because sometimes we forget that we're amazing because we've been through some things. We've had some rough patches. We had some hard places in our life. And sometimes we feel like there is no more for me, or there's no way I can ever be who I was supposed to be because of all of the things that I've done or all of the things that I've been through. But that is a lie. The devil is a liar. He is an accuser of the brethren. He is lying to you. And you're allowing his voice and how he feels to be louder than what your Father has said concerning you. There is something that you are called to do, but you can only do it. You can only fully walk in it, in that place, in that identity, and who God has called you to be with a surrender. So I encourage you to surrender. Surrender your journey to him and allow him to even take the lead on the journey because God loves you and he has so much greatness in store for you. Listen, I am Sharon Tillman. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in. I love you guys. And until next week, later.